Look, I think there's people that are just aggressive and stupid and they don't have boundaries.
It's mad that you have to share your location with someone just to feel safe. You know, that's the crazy thing. It never crossed my mind that I should walk down the street with a key between my fingers, just in case. Just in case what?
Sometimes I walk her to the corner, pretend I've left, and I make sure that she's gotten into school.
How old is she?
She's 10 now.
Would you still be following her at 15?
Yes. I mean, she's going to think I'm crazy, but yes. I mean, yesterday she asked me, so what is it going to be like when I'm 20? And I said, it just drives me nuts that I can't protect you, you know?
We're up against the social media monster, and it is very, very difficult to fight. It's bigger than all of us ever imagined, and I hope it's not too late.
Welcome to the She Word, conversations that women rarely have but really should. Although I believe this episode deserves a slightly different strapline. Conversations that men and women rarely have but really should. We've just come to the end of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. The Global 16 Days campaign is an international campaign to challenge violence against women and girls, with a particular emphasis this year on online violence. This was kicked off by the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women on the 25th of November. However, I want to look at this topic of violence from a completely different viewpoint. A few months ago, I was emceeing a conference focusing on violence and sexism against women in politics. It brought together an outstanding lineup of speakers, and the room was full of influential and amazing women. But the last speaker on the first day was a man. And I remember thinking to myself, why is a guy speaking? What on earth would he know about the violence that women face? But this speaker, Halvard Gorseth, completely changed my perception. He stood up and spoke powerfully. He apologized that out of 600 invitees, only 3 men had accepted to come. He pointed out that this topic is a conversation that women have been having over and over again, but without being able to make change. He said that he believed that this was because the perpetrators of the majority of violence against women is undertaken by a small percentage of men, and therefore men are the game changers. Men need to be part of the conversation, and men need to be the allies that lead to change. Even by the very title, violence against women, men are excluded from the issue. They're not involved in the discussion, and it's very easy to see that this is a women's problem. I don't believe that it is. I believe that it's a human issue, with the majority of victims being women. Women who are sisters, mothers, wives, daughters, friends. And without men involved in tackling this issue, for stepping up to take a role in challenging this landscape, we will just not be able to bring a shake-up to the issue that is long overdue and much needed. So I think, for possibly the first time, I'm sitting down with 3 remarkable men to speak about the endemic issue of violence, to get their point of view, and to really see if there's something that all society can agree on to make real change. Now, through this, I'm going to reference Reels, online content, and interviews. And I'm going to put the links to these under the show description, whether you're joining us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. But first up, I'm going to introduce my remarkable men. So, Jon, Malia, thank you for being at the table.
Thank you for the invitation.
You are so welcome. Jon, obviously, if anybody doesn't know, you are the king of podcasting. You are a producer for the Jon Malia podcast, but also Il Kazin. But you've also worked in cinema, in TV, and a rapper. But I remember one thing that really impacted me when I interviewed with you, and that was that you worked with, at one time, with young men in the correctional facility. And I'm going to get you to fill in the blanks and the details in just a moment. Frank!
Hello.
Hello. I think most people would know you from the 21 years in radio. That was my radio voice there. 21 years in radio. But right now you have moved on from there and exploring these fantastic new fields at Stargate Studios. More from you in just a second. Herman Grech.
Hello.
Chief editor, is it chief editor or chief in editor?
It's editor-in-chief. I just call myself a journalist.
At the Times, a journalist, but you're also a writer and a director of plays which we all know about and very exciting. Sticking with you, any more details about you, Herman?
No, apart from the fact that I promised we did not agree to be color-coded today. Just look at us.
Yeah, dress code is something, eh?
I promise you we did not have any phone calls about our fashion sense this morning. So no, this is not agreed.
We already spoke on the group chat.
Yeah, we
I don't believe you.
No,
I can't even get women to do this. These guys turn up for the podcast and they're like, I look at me. Yeah, we're all coordinated. But any more details that I missed from you professionally? Editor-in-chief, not chief in editor.
No, I'm the editor of The Times. I'm a journalist. I've been there for too long. So I've seen a bit of the changing face of Malta and the way we deal with such an important issue, including in the media, and the way what we're seeing on social media today is dictating society and dictating us maybe as well. Maybe we can talk about this later.
Absolutely, because you raised a really interesting point there. Frank, did I miss out any details of you apart from the fact that you obviously, I will not believe for a second that you did not call Herman and decide that you coordinated between your baseball cap and the shirt?
No, I think you've already been very kind with all of us calling us remarkable men. So we'll just stick to that.
Yeah, we'll take our wins and bank.
Yeah, exactly.
Did I miss out anything out about you, Jon?
I think the perennial, or like perhaps the most pertinent part of this for me in this conversation is that I have a daughter. So obviously I have huge vested interest in everything we're about to say.
Boom. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to kick off with some statistics. And I love the fact that you've referenced as well that you have a daughter, because this is really important when we come to discussing why men get involved. And that's because men have relationships with women in one way or another. So we're going to come to that. But I want to kick off with some stats. And I want to just list some pretty sobering statistics about violence against women. Estimates published by WHO indicate that globally, 1 in 3, 30% of women worldwide have been subjected to either physical or sexual intimate partner violence, or both, or non-partner sexual violence in their lifetime. In the EU, and this really shocked me, roughly 1 in 3 women experience gender-based violence. 1 in 3 women. About 1 in 4 women, 25% in the US, have experienced completed or attempted rape in their lifetime, and over 370 million girls and women globally have experienced rape assault as children. Statistically, the significant portion of sexual assaults are committed by men, with some studies showing that over half of men report engaging in sexually aggressive behaviors, while specific attempted rape figures range from over 5% to 10% in general populations, with men being the vast majority of perpetrators. But I think that's a really interesting point. We're going to come to the proportion in a moment. 97% of rapists will never see a day behind bars. Men commit approximately 90% of violent crimes, making male sex the most prominent risk factor for violent offenders. And whilst a large majority of men are not violent, and I want to make that very clear because we're not here bashing men, statistics show men will commit a disproportionate amount of violent crime, with studies on intimate partner violence finding around 20 to 30% of men report perpetrating some sort of violence. So I want to kick off by asking this pretty sobering question, but do you guys know of anybody in your circle, someone that you care about, and I'm not asking for names, but somebody who has experienced violence in one form or another?
I think with those statistics, it's very easy to assume it's a yes. And I mean, I speak for myself. It's definitely the case. Now, there are, of course, different levels of abuse and whatnot, but I am pretty sure that all of us have been up and close with people who have gone through stuff.
Obviously, my line of work, I've met quite a few people who have been abused one way or another, but I do know friends including once an ex-partner of mine, and I've seen the lasting impact of something like this happening. So yes is the answer.
Yeah, so I mean, from my work at the refugee camps, for example, that abuse was incredibly rampant, and on their trajectory to Malta. I mean, the horrors that women endured was unspeakable. Obviously, as you said, I worked at great depths with juvenile offenders. Some of them have done this kind of thing, and yeah, I had one particular friend that got particularly intoxicated one night, and he did make quite a horrible mistake, and it landed him in prison. Yeah, so quite
well,
familiar.
I think if you sit down and you ask women, most will confirm that they experience violence, bullying, sexual harassment, sexual assault, or rape. And I'm sitting here with a full house. I've experienced all of those. So I'm sitting at the table saying, okay, at least one person that's experienced those. But as you said, Frank, statistically, the chances are that we know women who've experienced those. They're part of our
I think
lives.
if anyone says no, chances are they don't know the people that they spend time with well enough. That's the truth. That's what that statistic shows.
Yeah. It's going to be somebody you know. Well, I'm going to come back to what you just said there, Jon, and ask if you know, and I'm not asking for names, but do you know a perpetrator? Do you know somebody who's done
as
this?
I said, I because I was so much involved in the correctional facility that I met a number. And most of them were, I would say, not psychopaths. You get the old psychopath that had no remorse. The ones that did have remorse carried a lot of shame. And it is probably, I would say, as demeaning for the man as it is for the woman. I don't know, because I mean, I'm going on assumptions here, but I do know that they were very embarrassed to discuss certain things with me. The project that I did there was kind of all about opening up through music. And so there was kind of this peeling of the onion. And when it got to that point, it was always shared with me with a sense of, well, I should have done much better, eh? Yeah. So...
But then I think, I mean, I know this is a very sober beginning to the conversation, but statistically, we all know somebody who's been a perpetrator. And we're not just talking about, obviously, domestic violence. We're talking about all sorts of violence, online bullying. We're talking about, I mean, the range is broad. And I'm going to caveat this conversation that we're having is by saying we'll never get to every part of the conversation in this show because it's huge.
My grandparents... Okay, they lived in a very impoverished kind of setting. My granddad, unfortunately, took up alcoholism very late in life. Must have been like in his late 40s. And it turned what was otherwise a very caring, beautiful man into a horrible human being. My grandmother was not the kind that would just take things lying down. My grandmother is one of my heroes. She's tough as anything tough as leather, as Randy MC would say. And so there were points where I was in that household where things got extremely, extremely more than tense, So I've seen it. And, relationships they can be very dangerous things if they're not conducted with a lot of responsibility.
Okay. You guys?
I mean, I do some work with JA, which is a young student organization. It's what we previously knew as Young Enterprise. So what students are encouraged to do is think of a problem and come up with a product to fix that solution. So of course you'd have students coming up with tote bags because we want less plastic bags and whatnot. But I remember there was this one group, I believe a couple of years ago, that came up with this soft toy. Looked very much like a Tamagotchi, not a Labubu, sorry, looked very much like a Labubu. Not a Labubu, Labubu was not in the picture back then, but they would stick it to the bag. And the whole point of this product is, if you ever felt like you're being assaulted or you ever felt in danger, you would tug at the soft toy and it would turn into an alarm and it would emit this loud noise. And good idea, but I remember thinking to myself, these are 16-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids, 18-year-old kids worried about being assaulted. You know, me when I walk in a quiet alley at night, even when I'm abroad, the thing that worries me is maybe getting mugged and losing my phone. That's the maximum, it gets to. I never worry about being assaulted sexually. I never worried about being violated in that way. But this is a reality that not just women, I mean, here we're talking about kids, who are thinking locally in Malta, by the way. So again, these are kids in Malta who are trying to come up with a solution for those moments which they feel are going to happen and how they'll deal with it back then. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, these are, innocent 16-year-old, 17-year-old kids. And that's the problem that they're trying to attack, that's the problem that they're trying to do something about. And I remember that being pretty eye-opening back then.
The abuse, look, abuse has always existed, no? Since any records existed, there has always been abuse. What is interesting is the way it's shifting, everything, the narrative, the way it's being carried out, because we've gone from, early 20th century, it might have been seen as a sign of power almost. Now we've moved to a situation where it's being played out on social media, where people in power are indirectly or directly instigating it. And we live in a world where there is more awareness about abuse than we've ever had before. So this is really ironic that we're living in these times when there's so much awareness about it. And yet, because of the narratives, because of the algorithms, and because of leaders in power, anybody from Donald Trump to Andrew Tate, normalizing certain discourse which feeds directly into sexual abuse. And when people are living in this world, despite having all that knowledge, I think the situation is going to get worse.
Agreed. And that's why we're having this conversation. So I want to throw onto the table, and then I'm going to give you guys the voice, but I want to throw on an actual situation. In 2018, I was walking my dog in a very popular dog walking spot. And behind me, there was some kids on a bicycle. And as I was walking along this largely pedestrian area, there was a car racing towards me, and I knew that there was these kids behind. So I stood out and I waved my hands to give notice to this car that it needed to slow down. The car didn't slow down. It actually hit me on my hand with the rear view mirror, and 100 meters further on, it slammed to brakes. The man got out the car and he came and he beat the shit out of me. He threw me to the ground 3 times. He kicked me. He bruised my ribs. And when he'd finished, when he'd stopped doing what he'd done, I was trying to get his number plate. When he stopped doing what he's done, he got it back in the car and he drove off. 3 times he hit me to the ground. 3 times he kicked me. 3 times he tried to strangle me. And I ended up calling the police, and they said, go to the hospital, go and get a hospital report, which I did. Now, the rest of the story of this unprovoked assault, which was witnessed by a friend of mine, the rest of the story has its own twists and turns because the man was never held accountable. But here is my question. Was this because I was a woman? Would this have happened to me if I was a man? Would I have been taken more seriously if I wasn't a woman? And as a woman, should I attribute any of this circumstance to a gender-related issue?
Well, okay. So I think there's no shortage of bullies anywhere, Malta being no exception to that unfortunate truth, but that happens. I think there's people that are just aggressive and stupid and they don't have boundaries. Now, perhaps it was maybe easier for him because, he found a woman that is obviously less strong and more frail and all of these biological components play into it. And he's like, oh, yeah, I can definitely do whatever the hell I want with this person. But that's not to say that he wouldn't have done the same to someone who is smaller, weaker. Bullies are bullies. Now, whether he hated you more because you were a female telling him what to do, could be. Could be, because there are of course Neanderthals amongst us that think that that this isn't post-Enlightenment 21st century Europe and that women are still kind of there to be subjugated. Of course there are, but it's kind of impossible for me to tell without interrogating the person to see what he thinks and the way he sees the world and what his ideologies are. But definitely there is this proclivity for violence in men. There is this proclivity for the need of dominance in men. And I think that person just had this primal urge course through his veins when he saw you telling him what to do, and he thought he could make a victim out of you, which unfortunately, apparently, the law allowed him to do eventually. In your context.
Well, that's a whole different.
That's a whole different
story.
chapter.
Why that never got.
But in as a sum total, it's hard to tell whether the guy is just a bully beefhead idiot.
What's interesting though, John, is that you will never see, probably not never, but most 99% of the cases, it's the men who will get out of the car to abuse somebody with 100%. A crowbar.
Totally.
100%. I think men are just.
That's the reality.
Look, there is a reality.
It is not about, men are bullies. I mean, they would have, with all due respect, if you were probably a man, if I was there trying to stop him, he'd probably tried to have beaten me up as well. But he knows he's got an easier prey having you there. And he probably knows subconsciously that if you go to the police, they might just say, oh yeah, just another whiner here.
But what you're saying is it's not because I was a woman, it's because he was a man.
Yeah, and I think that it's a very fair assessment. I mean, statistically, mathematically, statistically, biologically, I think all of these things point exactly towards what Herbert is saying.
All road rage incidents that I have reported throughout my career, it was always a man.
And forget road rage. I mean, beyond road rage, murder, assault, whether that is, all of these things that involve violent acts, men, even suicide. So the most violent thing you can do to yourself is kill yourself. Yeah. We all know what the statistics are, because men just naturally have this proclivity towards violence. Now, I will contend something else, however. Now that we know this fact, what do we do with it? Because sometimes men use this tendency for violence or risk-taking or aggression for good things. They become cops, they become firemen, they become soldiers, they become coast guards, they become the things that we need. Preferably, there was a man there that stopped this guy, that had a proclivity for, and could go, whoa, what the hell do you think you're doing, right? Preferably, we get more of channeling this masculine aggression towards good things, which I believe it can. Now, there are, in my view, there's three ways in which we can interface with this masculine proclivity for aggression, as Herman explained. One, we can decide, listen, let's wish it away. Let's pretend it doesn't exist. Let's put it under the carpet, and we say this is a social construct. It's nothing to do with biology. No, it's just let's brush it under the carpet and look away. You know what happens? Andrew Tate goes, I have an idea. That's what happens. Or men repress their masculinity, and a whole host of other personal, psychosexual, whatever, social issues emerge. Then there's the other way to deal with it, which is the Trump way, which is boys will grab them by the pussy. Mush, that's what boys do. Come on, guys, come on, that's what boys do. Andrew Tate, that's what boys do. Also a rubbish idea. I think there's a third idea that we have to explore, that we must explore. If we want this to change, we have to accept the fact. But now what do we do with the fact? I believe that masculine aggression, masculine energy should be sublimated in a way that is of service to oneself, to the family, to the community. And I think there's enough, if you look at someone like Muhammad Ali or Nelson Mandela, these are men that had a lot of aggression in them. But when it was time for Muhammad Ali to stand up against segregation, against racism, that's what he uses aggression for. And I think that is fantastic.
Take care and nourish your body with pure, ethical, organic vitamins and supplements. Browns, empowering wellness by prioritizing your health.
Periods are part of the game, but they don't have to throw you off your game. Try new Always Platinum for up to 100% leak protection, faster absorption, dry feel, and it's more cushiony, so you can focus on your game. It's a new Period, always.
We know when we need to take that pause, that break, but we feel guilty for stepping away from our partners, kids, and work. We feel like we need someone's permission to have something that we simply deserve. The She Word has partnered up with Myoka Spas to give you just that, your permission to take time for yourself, the time you wouldn't usually take, but really should. Use code word SHEWORD for 10% off any individual treatment when booking online at myoka.com, or enjoy 10% off any gift box in store with gift vouchers over €100. We're going to come to the solution because I'm going to put that on pause and hold that because I think that's a fantastic solution idea. I want to explore a little bit further about coming back to you, Frank, what you were saying before about your students and their alarm and carrying an alarm, because women are often mocked for this. And in this instance, this is why I ask, is it because we're women? Because women are often mocked for this. I've seen a lot of content online recently where women are being criticized for not being friendly and not being engaging because they are cautious. We as women, and me, particularly after this event, are extremely cautious about our behavior. We do carry alarms. We do walk with the keys. With the keys. This is not made up. This is something that I, as a woman, do. Most of my friends do it. We do it all the time. We make sure that people know where we are and so on. And this is not something
mad. It's mad that you have to share your location with someone just to feel safe. You know, that's the crazy thing. It never crossed my mind that I should walk down the street with a key between my fingers, just in case. Just in case what?
Yeah.
You know, as I said, the thing I worried about most when I was even maybe abroad going down an alleyway is maybe getting my phone nicked.
Yeah.
You know, in the grand scale of things, I mean, seriously, that's my main concern. That's my major concern. While women are worried about all sorts of other things, you know, if you're on the phone, almost to the point, like if you want the phone, just have it.
Absolutely.
You know, like.
Well, again, I mean, so first up, I heard a beautiful quote that kind of put this in context. It says, a woman once asked a male friend why men feel threatened by women. He said, women might laugh at us. When asked why women feel threatened by men, she replied, we're afraid that men might kill us. And that puts it in a context. I mean, you just mentioned there about take the phone. There is another aspect of this which I think men are not aware of. Have you heard of the term of fawning?
No.
Yeah.
Do you know what fawning is?
No.
Okay, fawning is where Frank is going to ask me for my mobile number. And I'm thinking to myself, why does he want my mobile number? And I'm not going to give my mobile number out. And I might say to you in a reel that I saw recently, and this is what would happen. I might say, hey, listen, you know, you're a really nice guy. Thank you very much. Listen, you can follow me on Instagram. That'd be great. Let's contact that way, because that puts a safer boundary barrier. And he comes back and says, well, why won't you give me my phone number? Why won't you give me your phone number? And I'll be like, oh, listen, you know, just not now. I'm not coming back and saying, no, I am looking for the fastest, safest exit for that scenario. And women do this all the time. They calculate, how can I get out of this situation without causing the man to be more aggressive to me than he already is, or intrusive more than he already is? Let me find the safest. So sometimes when women are saying, oh, no, it's okay, it's fine. Listen, no, it's fine. What we're actually doing is negotiating 100 calculations to see how we can get out of the situation safely, rather than just turning around and saying no. Because no, we know, is going to instigate aggression, and we don't want to do that. That's what fawning is. So it ties into what you were saying there. And I don't think a lot of men, do men know about this? Do men know that sometimes women are negotiating 1,000 calculations to be able to get out of situations?
Well, some do, obviously. But I think, maybe some people just need a bit of a guidebook about the do's and don'ts and the signals being sent. But sometimes I think it's got a lot to do with education and upbringing. If you're brought up in a family where your dad is acting this way, unfortunately, there are no life lessons that teaches you that, no, that is not the way to approach a woman, and to take no for an answer. But I don't think there's any one solution here.
I think there's so much. No, I think there is so much.
Too many solutions. But
there's like too many angles that we have to explore, because you have the male issue that is that you're saying, like, okay, be a better role model, dad, is what you're saying.
That's, I think, one of the most important.
I think that's a fantastic place to start, right? But obviously not all dads are going to take you up on that. So there's always going to be a slither of the population that's going to have boys that are going to grow up into derelict men, or men that can cause these kind of complicated situations, right? So then the question is, okay, as a woman, you have to be prepared for that. I have a daughter, right? I have a daughter. I know I can't bubble wrap the world, and this drives me crazy. Because I have a boy and a girl, and I notice myself. There was, for her to be able to walk to school, now we live 5 minutes away from the school. The amount of negotiation she had to do in order to allow me, when the boy asked, you feel like you're ready for it, bro? You sure you're ready? Go. When it came to the girl, it took her 2 years to convince me. 2 years. And she doesn't know, but sometimes I walk behind her. Sometimes I walk her to the corner, pretend I've left. I keep walking, and then until she can't see me, and I make sure that she's gotten into school.
How old is she?
She's 10 now.
Would you still be following her at 15?
Yes. I mean, she's going to think I'm crazy, but yes. I mean, yesterday she asked me, so what is it going to be like when I'm 20? And I said, it just drives me nuts that I can't protect you, It doesn't cross my mind with the boy, but so look, the reality is that even if we do a great job, fantastic job, the best job, there's still going to be a number of psychopaths, Machiavellian assholes out there that want to do our women harm, right? So then it's, okay, how do we equip the women? Because intuitively, maybe I'm wrong, I don't think that negotiation is good with these people. I don't think it's like, oh, well, this, that, the other. I think intuitively, I don't know, I could be wrong. I don't have a prescription here, but no could possibly avert further. And this idea of, because women might laugh at us, bro, grow a pair. Women are meant to laugh at you. They're meant to tell you, you're not quite enough yet. Go try harder. Go read a couple of books. Go get emotionally, more calibrated, right? The idea that women are afraid, I don't think there is a solution to it. I don't think there's a final solution to it. But it scares the hell out of me. Like, what am I going to do when my daughter tells me, I want to go Erasmus? Be enough, man. Man, what can I say to her? Sorry, the mic is here. It's like, what can I say to her? Because I want her. Like, one of my grandmother's greatest remorses was my grandma, who was a great dad, fantastic dad, very loving dad, was that when she was 20, she wanted to become a nurse in the UK. And she had the opportunity to do so. But her dad, because I think he has my disposition, said, Musha, you stay here. Right? So, but you want your kids to go out into the world, take on their adventure so they become the best version that they could possibly be. But at the same time, as a parent, it's a terrorizing proposition.
Frank, you were shaking your head when Jon was talking about his daughter going to school.
Because I have young nieces. I don't have kids, but I have two very young nieces, and I do look at them and say, one day they're going to be 18, they're going to be 20. And I know what 18, 20-year-olds go through because I obviously have interface with students. And I also know, and I also know what I was like when I was 18 and 20 and the way we objectified 18 and 20-year-old girls when I was that young. So...
Wow. That admission that when you were 18, 19 years old, you were objectifying women in what way, Frank? Because, I mean, that to me is just the most honest thing I've ever heard.
And I know it's going to sound bad for me saying it, but because boys will be boys, and that's the problem.
Because like Trump said, right?
Because boys will be boys. And I'm not saying it's the right thing, but it's where it all starts, no? It all starts with the little jokes. It all starts with the little comments. It all starts with those small moments. And then, in certain cases, stuff just snowballs.
What else do I say?
I would be the world's biggest hypocrite if I sit down here and say, we need to do better as a society without saying, I myself need to do better. No? I need to do better. If I want the situation to improve, we need to do better as a society. But even I need to look at the mirror and understand how I can be doing better, how I can be doing things differently.
Yeah.
Right?
You touched on something that I asked you guys to look at before we sat down, and it was a reel that was created by a man, and it talks about basically the sliding scale. We look at men being perpetrators and offenders of violence against women. Either you are or you aren't. And this, which you'll find underneath here, because I'll reference it, but it talks about the fact that we don't sit in one of two camps. And I found it very sobering, and I don't know how you guys reacted to it. So here we have at the top, we have our mass serial offenders, and underneath that we have one-time offenders. Underneath that we have the men that are encouraging offenders, making joke about it, high five because a guy got off with a girl who was drunk. Underneath that we've got ignoring offenders, brushing it off, and then ignorance towards offenders, not aware that this is a big problem for women. Then underneath this, we have avoiding offenders, deciding not to associate with offenders. And we're going into the greener area here. And then underneath that, we've got discouraging offenders, implicit encouragement, but disassociation. And then at the bottom here, we've got stopping offenders, the one-on-one guys who actually take them out. But the problem is, as it says in the reel, it's not this way.
It's not black and white.
This way. And the majority are sitting in the middle.
Look, let's establish some facts. We've already touched upon it, but I think we need to underline it, because even the tone of this podcast, there are men listening to this podcast, and I come from the media background, and I understand the problems of sometimes the way we frame certain arguments. So from the outset, the vast majority of men are decent. They're not rapists.
Absolutely.
They're not abusers. Before we eliminate 3/4 of men who are watching this
Absolutely,
podcast, because
100%.
I think this is very, very important. It's the way we approach the issue which is important. And I think the problem with society these days is that the vast majority of decent guys who have never done it, who respect women and they respect themselves and they respect everybody else, is that they're not speaking out against abuse, because they face being bullied themselves, they're being called out, especially in the social media world. And that is the biggest problem we are facing today in society. And this is where I started my conversation, that we have moved from a problem which comes in from the way your parents or society looked upon you, towards what we're seeing on social media. And the good people, the vast majority of people, are not calling out abuse and wrongdoing and sexism, the same way we're not calling out racism, the same way we're not calling out xenophobia. In Malta, Jesus Christ, the xenophobia at the moment is horrific. And we're not calling it out because, you know what, the bullies will scream louder. They are the ones who are making all the noise on social media. And the decent people I know are there silently complaining in their living rooms among themselves.
But being silent is part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
that.
exactly what I'm saying.
Like, tacit complicity is a big issue in Malta. I think I don't want to open up the subjects too much, but it's as you said, it's like across the board. On the way here, I met a person who said, I follow you, but I never mention it.
There you go.
Because it's always like, okay, thank you for being like supportive, I guess, but at the same time, be courageous. Be courageous, because are you really like the question?
To use a
sexually charged.
I say grow up hair all the time.
This is the problem.
Exactly.
Are you decent if you know that there is something that is wrong? You know it because you've kind of like articulated for yourself. You thought about it enough, and in the wrong and right category, it fell in the wrong bin. And you still go, well, maybe if I just look at the other way.
But John, isn't this what's happening with all of us?
It is, but is it a good thing?
To you?
Is that a good thing?
Of course, it's terrible.
And can we call those people decent?
The people who are not speaking out, I think they're cowards.
Yeah.
Fuck it, you just get.
So what do we do?
You get some shit in return. So what? I speak out about racism, but you know what? When you just put in one comment and there's people sending me on Messenger, oh, well done for speaking out and all that. Yeah. And they're all talking to me privately. And I say, speak out. What's the problem? It's a free society. Yeah. There is freedom of speech in Malta. So cut the crap. Speak out. No, because of my job and I've got this. And oh, come on. And this is same happens with calling out sexual abuse and any sort of abuse. We're scared.
Well, I'm going to jump in with this. Educator Jackson Katz states that as long as we are calling violence against women and abuse against women a women's issue, we're doing a certain level of victim blaming. It's a woman's responsibility to deal with it. And the language used is passive. The number of women who are attacked or raped, not the number of offences committed by men. And again, I am not man-blaming. We're talking about this in the context of it being something that we should be coming together over. If you add the active agent men within the title, then it's more honest and accurate. It's not enough for men to say, and this is exactly what we're saying at the table, I don't abuse my girlfriend or wife. This is not something men should be getting high fives for. Men need to step up. This is a leadership issue, and this is where I think this becomes something that men can own and feel proud of. It's a leadership issue. We need more men to have the courage to step up and speak out against sexism and abusive behaviour and violence, because it's a leadership issue, because we as women would utterly respect any man.
I'm going to be very careful how to word this, but this is why I'm not a big fan of the word feminism.
I hate the word feminism.
Yeah.
Because the second someone tells me I'm a feminist, and the implications of that are, I look in the mirror, say, I'm a man, and say, it doesn't concern me. When in reality, a big part of the issue is the men in the equation, which is what you are saying. One of the things that I don't want to use the word appreciated, but one of the things that stood out to me in the recent 16 days of violence campaign is that they also addressed the perpetrators this year. They also encouraged the perpetrators to seek help. They said, you are part of the problem and you need help. Just in the same way that we need to help victims, we also need to help the perpetrators. And that is something that I appreciated in the messaging coming from the commissioner that's working against gender violence and in this campaign, because eliminating the perpetrators out of the equation is never going to fix it. You're just going to end up with a bunch of people saying this is wrong, and a bunch of people, the vast majority, looking away. It's not going to fix itself. We're flawed by design. That's the issue. As men, as humanity, we're flawed by design because we want to feel proud. We're being told to suppress our emotions. So that's what needs to be addressed.
I think it's self-censorship. I think that's our problem. That's, what's so wrong in saying this, abuse is wrong and calling it out? Is it because, my friends will think I'm a pussy, or because this is
But
what's
why
happening?
is it easier for somebody to speak up against, I don't know, animal cruelty,
Oh, yeah.
but then they'll hold themselves back when it comes to speaking, by the way, about fellow human beings, about women?
Bingo.
Because I will be the first one. I get approached all the time to help NGOs and whatnot. If someone tells me we're doing this campaign against animal cruelty, easy yes. Something, gender violence, I, by design, I'll still say yes, but I stop and think about it and say, okay, let's look at the optics of this. How do I fit into this? It's mad when you think about it.
Who are you concerned that you piss off?
I'm not concerned about anything. It's just what I do. It's the natural instinct.
Because of course,
The second you
politics.
tell me we're going to protect animals, yes, great, let's go for it. What t-shirt do you want me to wear? Let's go. Immediately. The second you tell me, we're doing this thing
What do
about...
you think you're risking?
I don't know.
But Frank just said it's just it's not a it's not a
easier.
thought. It's an instinct.
It's more natural. It's more natural to stand up for animal rights as men. It's easier for us. It's more natural to stand up for and protect animals. Nothing wrong with it. By all means, let's keep doing that, please. And we need to do more of that. Than it is to have this conversation about fellow human beings. When you think about it, it's...
You might not find it difficult to speak up. We don't, because we come from the media. You have to grow a thick skin to survive in the business.
Wrong, I do. It's not. It's always a calculate. It's always like, okay, well, here we go again.
Yeah.
There's always risk.
But John, he mentioned animal cruelty. I think it's a perfect example. We all feel safe speaking about, animal cruelty because the vast majority, 99%, think it's really bad, and I see it from our own statistics. The moment I have a story about a cruelty, somebody killed a cat, whatever, it gets 5 times the readership rather than a woman being abused. I am not joking. This is how bad the situation is. But the fact that most people feel much safer talking about animal cruelty rather than calling out the abuse, because we fear that we're going to be called out and being called out, how do you know the facts and all that, is incredible. And I think...
It's a bit of a stigma.
I think what Frank mentioned about animals is perfect.
You also mentioned something, and I want to come back to something you said a few minutes ago about you hate the word feminist. And I immediately knee-jerked and said, so do I. And the reason being that it has been hijacked. The word feminism, which was appropriate in the recent decades, has been hijacked. And it's easy to put women who are campaigning for equal human rights under the idea of women's rights. It's easy to put them in a box. It's easy to put, well, it's the feminist. The minute you use that label, a woman is a feminist, okay, I don't relate to that because it's not. I mean, I just want to throw it on the table that equally, protecting animals is something very noble that we should all be doing.
No, and let's do more of that.
These are human rights.
Yeah.
They're not women's rights. They're not feminist rights.
Yeah.
They're human rights.
I mean, I don't want to
because
open...
women are human.
I don't want to open another can of
attacking
worms,
you.
but even when it comes to speaking about equal pay for men and women, I mean, why the hell are we having this conversation in 2025?
Yeah.
It should be obvious. And that, again, one of the things that I saw this campaign abroad of a €1 coin, which had a substantial part of it missing. And it said, you know what, when a woman gets paid with the current pay scale and whatnot, that's what a euro means for a woman. It's got that bit missing.
Everybody all around, everybody's getting down. Everybody's like, wow, there's a new sound in town. Everybody's like, wow. Everybody all around, everybody's getting down. Everybody's like, wow, there's a new sound in town. Everybody's like, wow.
That's just our style.
Deal Standard, celebrating 90 years of success in the local market, exclusively from Satariano.
Well, you and I were actually there watching the live voting in the EU Parliament, where there were hundreds of people in front, and they were voting on whether women should receive equal pay for equal work to men, whether this should be made compulsory.
Seriously, we need to have a vote for that?
And not only should we have a vote, but it passed by the narrowest margin, which means there were 49% of the EU Parliament sitting beneath who thought that it was a great idea that women should not receive equal pay for equal work.
Who voted against that?
Well,
people elected to be representing not us, Europeans.
No, I understand it's the European Parliament, right?
Yes.
But to
the far right.
But that's but 51% is not the far right.
But that's the problem.
Is it the SND? Is it the EPP? I mean, we're talking about a major bloc here. We're not talking about a fringe group of circus politicians. Do we know? Because that's insane. That's insane to me.
It's insane.
Like why if me and you are doing the same job and I was a woman and you as a man, how do I justify as a business owner, for example, that I pay
No, it doesn't.
the female less? I mean, I employ mostly women. So it's a crazy thing to me. Like if you're running a business, what you want is like the best talent.
Yeah, of course.
The talent that is, most loyal and most hardworking, and you want to reward that talent. Like it's so self-defeating to be sexist in your hiring that like you're just leaving talent on the table.
But John, going back to the argument of this feminism, being called feminist and all that, we all work in the media, the four of us, and we know narrative is extremely important. We need to be very careful with the way we structure an argument. So automatically, it's very convenient for a guy to say, oh, you're a bunch of feminists. See, we know where you stand in it. And it's very wrong for the feminists to go, oh, stop mansplaining to me and all that. It can be justified. Sometimes it's not justified. Once I was accused of mansplaining. I couldn't believe it. But this is the narrative. This is the same way we talk about racism. It's pointless telling someone, oh, you're just a racist and piss off, basically. It doesn't work. I'm just going to put him in a corner and he's going to bring out his swastika and...
But sometimes it's not even that, eh? Sometimes it's like people have legitimate concerns.
Yes. So this is why you have to explain. Maybe this guy is scared of the overpopulation. Maybe this guy is really genuinely concerned that Muslims are bad people. And we need to start engaging here, bring the discussion down here and discuss. The problem is, I think a lot of level-headed people have given up of even engaging in that discourse. And unfortunately, discourse is happening in the media, especially in the social media.
Yeah.
And people have switched off.
And I think the social media algorithm really feeds this issue. It just exacerbates it and makes it worse.
It's the biggest problem of our lifetime, I think.
You have, the manosphere, which is basically, very clickbaity. The manosphere would be Andrew Tate and, everyone that orbits his boomerang, his sonic boom. Yeah.
I want to jump in because there's under here you'll see this as well. Professor Galloway clearly states that sex no longer sells. This is a guy that you really, really like. We had this conversation on the chat.
Oh, yeah, Scott.
Platforms elevate content that increases engagement, and the algorithm has identified that the most successful component is rage.
Yeah.
These experts behind multi-billion-dollar businesses elevate content that makes you rage at your neighbor, the other gender, and immigrants, because this is what sells. The platforms are doing one thing, and that is to sequester you from your relationships with other people and glue you to the screen. That's how they make their money, and they will elevate the content that enrages you. And this is what you were just mentioning about rage. That's where we get it from. This is why Trump is... In my mind, this is why he's doing so well, because he's enraging men, young men.
Yeah, rage sells. More than common sense, more than dignity, more
than sex,
more than solidarity. Yeah. So this is what's happening.
Well, I don't know about the more than sex part, and I do love Scott Galloway. I didn't know his surname was Galloway, actually. I just told because he calls himself Scott G. Fantastic show. The Raging Moderates, it's called.
Yeah.
It's such a good, it's perfect for what society needs right now, which is balance. Because on one side you have, what we're talking about. You have, so they have the manosphere on one side, the feminists. They're not exactly because my mother was a feminist, right? But you have feminists that took a very adversarial stance against men. Everything is the fault of men, and everything that goes wrong in society is the patriarchy and
that's
this
when
narrative.
people switch off.
People switch off there, or they really tune in, they hyper tune in, and they just keep watching that content, that man hating, conservative hating, anything to do with conservatism, religion, and everything else is hated there. Everything to do with liberalism and rights and everything else is hated on this side. And it's just more rage and rage and rage and rage. Our job as broadcasters is to try and bring some clarity to this madness. It's not simple, because the algorithm rewards aggravation. If you go through YouTube, it's this guy destroys this guy owns this person. And that is not a way to have an intelligent conversation. It's not a way to get to the bottom of things. It's the way to keep people hooked, for sure. But it's going to be really tough to cut through this noise. So again, no simple answers.
But coming back to this scale that we were talking about a moment ago, this scale of here's your most serious perpetrator of violence or sexual abuse or whatever against women, and here's your guy who's speaking out and calling out that. You have this whole range of behavior in between. And my question is coming back to that element. Can you relate to that? That something will come up on your feed, someone will say something that is a little bit dodgy, it's a little bit derogatory, it's a little bit, not really good, like you were saying about objectification, and you just kind of let it pass.
But what's happening to all of us? There's so much noise in the world that most of us are switching off. I know friends of mine, decent people, saying, no more Facebook. I don't want to hear anymore. There's too much. If you look at my Facebook feed, I've eliminated a lot of the racists, the bigots, the people who think what Israel is doing in Gaza is a human rights issue. So because I don't want the noise, I get enough noise in my own job. But what has that meant?
It means you're ignoring the problem.
I'm sterilized. My Facebook feed is sterilized. It's all about human rights, David Bowie, and things that are not. Yeah, of course. But
so where do we start, Ma? Because we're agreeing. There's a
no. I agree with you.
There's
the biggest
problem.
problem we have is the algorithm. Now explain that what's appearing on your feed, all this racist, sexist diatribe, is not actually the world, but it's your own little bubble, and you're being influenced by that bubble. And when big tech is buying off big companies and re-engineering what's appearing on your feed, then what choice do you have? I was a big fan of Twitter. As a journalist, Twitter is an important tool. The minute Elon Musk took over, it went from human rights issues, media literacy issues, to the rise of the right wing. How Donald Trump started appearing in my feed. And I don't know if people realize, but under Instagram accounts from last January, Donald Trump is appearing on your feed, even though you do not subscribe. And we're not understanding what's going on in this world, and we're not fighting back against that narrative. And hence, we are being influenced by, the Andrew Tates of this world, who have grown wings in the last year.
Can I come back to tying that into something that Frank had said before? And Frank, I'm not picking on you.
It's fine.
He's got a good pair. He's fine. But from what Herman was saying just then, tying into you having this awareness and this openness to express the fact that in the past you had a period in your life where you may have engaged in this objectification of women. I think that the the most significant issue that you just mentioned, Herman, there about relating to objectification of women is the leader of the USA, who objectifies not only, but is also a known offender towards women. Now, of course, that then, if you are not informed, if you are not aware of it, will influence the way that you feel about women, about their rights, their autonomy, their decision making, and then we hit that this sliding scale. So I want to ask you, there must have been a moment for you to be able to sit at this table and say, I behaved like that. There must have been a moment of awareness.
I'll tell you when that moment happened. I'm not going to be speaking about the women's side because I like to think I matured a long time ago. But very recently, I joined an international company. I went back to work for an international company. Different religions, different sexualities, different nationalities. Suddenly, I realized day one of that job, I was like, I will not get away with half of the comments I would have passed in my previous jokes, in my previous environment. I would have not gotten away with those jokes in this environment. Because suddenly I realized that, so when I was in my previous job, pretty much everyone was local. We all had our way of doing things, and woman comes into the room and everyone, is very happy to say certain things. The second I found myself in a very different environment, as I said, different nationalities, different religions, different sexualities, suddenly I got very much a very clear understanding of what the world is actually like, not my little bubble. And the second I said, you know what, if I want to stay out of HR's office, I need to change my behavior. I need to change the silly things, the innocent comments needed to change as well. Because suddenly I found myself in a place where any silly comment could have gotten me into trouble. And that's what changed.
Yeah, but sometimes...
Now, I'm talking about a very silly example here. I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not talking...
No, but this just ties in.
It's the little comments. It is the little things where someone would say something and you'd call someone, I don't know, a pussy. Yeah. Suddenly I'm like, oh, I don't think I can call
This worries me a bit. I'm quite sensitive to this, I think. Like at my workplace, for example, major thing that I like to be teased about is like that I get chubby from time to time, right? They go, stop eating. And they make all these kinds of jokes. I find them hilarious. Personally, I find them hilarious. And if that had to kind of if I had to sterilize the commentary around, or as we have a hippie.
Yes,
you can't go to an extreme because
You can't go to an extreme, but you need to be sensitive about what that comment is. When I was in a local environment, people knew me as Frank, as the comedian, as a guy who works on radio. So they already had an impression of me. And probably I could get away with certain comments, with certain jokes because people knew about me. Suddenly I walked into an environment where people didn't know that I'm the guy passing comments on radio and whatnot. Suddenly I was just any other human being. And suddenly I realized, listen, okay, my behavior needs to change subtly.
Frank, who establishes the rules for common decency? Because for me, it's about decency. John, if we go in there and joke about his pot belly or, we have this expression
I have feelings. We haven't eaten them too. We
have this expression, for example, which I like using. Back in my day, I'm older than you guys. In the 80s, it was like, I remember the time when you used to go to Axis or Sticks, the dance floor, and you pointed people, duck, poofta, he's gay. Remember? And it was the biggest insult. Suddenly, we went from that extreme, which was ridiculous, to the extent that if I call John gay as a friend and all that, it becomes a big issue in the media and all that, which I think extremes are wrong on both sides.
Agreed.
The problem is...
How do you temper it?
How do you temper it? And I think this is the problem, even going back to the feminist issue. Where is it coming from? We cannot sterilize a discussion that you cannot even joke these days, because this is what makes making people angry on all sides. I know somebody who lost his job because he cracked a joke, as he always does, in public, and he's a comedian again, because he passed that joke at work. And this is what makes people really angry. Use common sense, just because you might have cracked a joke because everybody knows you're a comedian, just because you walked into this company and they think you're a misogynist all of a sudden. That is also wrong.
I completely agree. It's about how you present yourself. It's about being more aware of what's happening around you, about what people feel.
Because the levers can be pulled the other way as well. There comes a point, like we have to agree that I think you said that, like, articulated perfect. We're human, we're imperfect. And in our humanity, there is this kind of proclivity for looking for power dynamics. And we're trying to we're all trying to understand where do we sit in the hierarchy of even the workplace. And sometimes a way to get power is by saying, you know what, HR Frank is a bit of a misogynist. And that can be unfortunately, it can be weaponized as well, because unfortunately you could be a misogynist.
Yeah.
And these things become extremely, extremely complicated. But if you, on the other side, on the flip side is, if people start crying wolf way too often, people are going to start getting very annoyed. And then there will be a case where someone that really needs help, and they'll be like, we're not sure. Like recently, there was that whole Johnny Depp, and I forgot the name of his ex-wife or whoever the hell she was,
Amber, what's her name?
Amber, whatever.
Amber Rose.
Where she basically, thought, okay, look, the culture is really anti-men right now. Let me abuse of this circumstance in order to win points, popularity, status, money, and all of those things. And you abuse a very serious thing, which is spousal abuse. Right? And you take it and you use it to your advantage because you're a charlatan, right? You're no better than Andrew Tate in that case. You're both trying to advance.
John, sorry.
No.
Three of us, we're men, we work in office environments and all that. One of the things that has impacted me in the last 20 years is the fact that the way we greet people at the office, the Maltese, how we are. We're tactile. We like hugging people. But in the last few years, when I see, because there are stories we reported on, and because of what I see, I might go up to Frank and say, Frank, good story. But I might not go up to Trudy, who's a colleague, and say, good story, and hug her, because I really mean, good story, well done. Because that might be misinterpreted. He might not file a report. You might. And even though it's the most friendly gesture I've done, and this ties into what Jon is saying here, and it's becoming a problem. And this is what I fear is, instead of bridging this divide, it's growing bigger.
Yes, but 1 in 3 women are victims of abuse, are victims of violence, or they're victims of assault.
I'm not taking that away.
Where do we start?
I'm going to ask a pertinent question in a second, but I just want to make the point, when we talk about, you picked out the case between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. And I think a lot of women I know were having an intelligent conversation about the fact that you could see the fake victim kind of presence that Amber Heard was showing in court, and we as women were saying, this is not good for women, because we will not be taken seriously.
Yeah.
But when 1 in 3 women are being victims of domestic violence or sexual assault, 1 in 4 sexual assault, so on and so forth, we're still finding an excuse to dismiss the issue when the issue is
P Diddy.
Holy mackerel. Yep.
Yeah.
How many people looked the other way when all that abuse was happening? There's a Netflix documentary that's out right now. It's mind blowing.
It's out.
But I binged it. But when you start seeing, the second one person spoke out and other people started speaking out, suddenly everyone started saying, we knew about that. That was common knowledge. These people have been... How many people have been looking away? And that's the issue. Yeah, all those people, and that is the grey that we were talking about earlier, that slider. There's the black, there's the white, there's an awful lot of grey. Those people aren't necessarily doing something wrong by actively doing it. What they're doing wrong is maybe looking away, ignoring the problem. So they are not being actively part of the solution. They're actually either ignoring the problem or just not engaging in the problem solving. So yes, if we need to get to be too sterile, if we need to tweak our behavior, even at the office, to the point that if need be, we don't crack certain kind of jokes, yes, if that's what's going to bring the balance back in, sometimes you need to shock the system.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you need to go from here to land in a happier space. And with those kind of statistics, maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe what we need to do is shock the system.
So guys, I try to whittle down this conversation to 3 questions, if I may. Or 3, let's say, claims that we're trying to answer. No. I'm just trying to distill, because
it's the Jon Word now.
You can join in the conversation.
I just feel like we try to be helpful. I'm trying to be constructive.
High five me.
Hey, oh cool.
Sorry.
This is abuse of fat people. So it is 3 things, I think. So how do we get less Diddies? So how do we produce less Diddies? Right? That sounds odd, but you know what I'm saying. How do we get people to have the courage to call out Diddy when they see one? Right? I hate that I'm using Diddy every time I say this. It sounds less serious. But also, how do we equip women that when a perpetrator happens in their lives, they have good ways in which to negotiate the perpetrator? Those are the 3 main things that we need to answer. And I think, they take about a year each, basically.
Let me start from the 3rd question, because I think that's very important. The one positive thing that happened in Malta the last year is that the rates of reports have increased.
Skyrocketed, yeah.
Which is a very good thing, because the statisticians at least are realizing it's not because there are more incidents, but at least women are,
comfortable speaking up.
Yes, and there are structures that are coming into place where you can file a report. What worries me is that some of the laws we have introduced in the last couple of years and more have been knee-jerk. They reacted right away, normally to a murder of a woman.
Yeah.
Femicide cases. So the laws have been fast-tracked and introduced. Great. The problem is, are there the systems in place to make sure that the women who are actually reporting they're being, taken up right away? And this is one of the biggest problems we have. There are some of them that are working, but my God, I still know women personally who have been to the police and they've been treated like shit.
Same.
Dercos, recommended by dermatologists. Anti-hair loss protocol. A concentration of aminexil in a scalp treatment to reduce hair loss by 29%. And in a stimulating shampoo to boost volume by 48%. A potent synergy for hair 3 times stronger. Anti-hair loss protocol. By Dercos, the dermatological scalp and hair expert.
Welcome to Maison Perrier. Discover Maison Perrier Chic and enjoy our new non-alcoholic cocktail range. Maison Perrier. Enjoy our new sophisticated mocktails.
I'm going to come back to you because there's a very famous quote by Ben Schloss, who's a comedian, and he stands there and he talks about the fact that if all the women in all the world were to come forward who have been raped or sexually assaulted, came forward to report it, there are not enough police and courts and judges for the next millennia to be able to deal with their claims. And I'm coming back to something that you had said earlier on about working with young people. This will haunt me. I stood up at a conference that I was moderating a panel discussion on, and there was a young lady at the back of the room, and she said she was asking questions at the end of this moderating panel. I said, yes, of course, you ask your question. She said, and this was a conference on violence against women, and she asked the panel, she said, what is being done for the uprising of sexual assault and rape against young women in the University of Malta? And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, I don't know one single woman, one of my friends who has not been sexually assaulted. and it's on the rise, and we aren't addressing it. We aren't tackling it. We aren't whatever's happening. That this reporting. Don't forget, within these statistics, we don't even know how many people don't report, how many people don't step forward, how many women and or men don't come forward to the police.
What's causing it? I mean, that
Well,
must have been
in
the
which
question.
case, I'm going to thank you for the lovely segue into something that I would like to just
Can I
put
get a high
forward.
five for that? Or
There you go. So I'm going to just make this address, and I'm going to address this thing at university and young people specifically, but and this is the UK and the US, but I suspect that it is no difference here in Malta. In the UK and the US, there's no cohort that is falling faster than young men. If you go to the morgue and you have 5 people there who have died of suicide, 4 of them will be men. 60% of men under the age of 30 have given up on dating completely. Homeless and opiate crisis concerning young men, 12 times more likely to be incarcerated young men, 3 times more likely to be addicted or homeless. 1 in 7 young men in the UK are NEETs, neither in education, employment or training. 1 in 3 still living at home by the age of 25. Lack of empathy, and I want to throw this out here, due to the unearned, his words, not mine, massive privilege of the recent male generations has created a lack of empathy for young men. General sense is that you've had 3,000 years of a head start over women, and therefore the lack of empathy being shown to young men is putting them in an extremely vulnerable group. And if it was any other group, there would be programs to help these people, to support these people, but because of this historical, unearned privilege that men have experienced, the empathy is just not there. So where does this come from? Well, biologically, men take longer to develop their prefrontal cortex, but also big tech, these companies that are doing all they can, as we mentioned before, to sequester young men and get them stuck on a screen. Dopa-hungry young men are susceptible. In the US, young men of the age of 20 to 30 are spending more time inside than prison inmates. Asocial, asexual, getting their living social groups and relationship satisfaction through porn online. His words, not mine. That to me indicates that there is not just a problem with women and violence against women and sexual abuse, but there is a massive problem with young men and men that we are not talking about.
And we glamorize words like doom scrolling.
Right.
We think it's cool to say I'm doom scrolling. We glamorize it. We make it look cool.
Can we see that perhaps the both of these are related?
They're not related. There is a relationship of causality. So at the root of the problem of everything we've discussed is a crisis in masculinity. It is that males are not merely more likely to beat their wife, they're also more likely to kill a stranger. They're also more likely to kill themselves. So there is a problem with men and the way that they interface with existence in general, right? So again, what do we do about this? Well, I think, first of all, we need to establish as a society that, masculinity exists, right? Because it's not only the prefrontal cortex issue, there's also the testosterone issue. My testosterone and your testosterone are completely on different charts. And that's why I am maybe physically bigger, but hairier, uglier, smellier, all of these things, right? If you look at the jails full of men. Why?
Yeah.
Because psychological reports, studies show us that far more men are Machiavellian, far more men are psychopaths or narcissistic, malignant narcissists. So of course, there are these traits. Now, it's a case of bridling this aggression. This aggression is going to exist. Now, how do you bridle it? Now, I have some background maybe in this because I've dealt with delinquents. I've dealt with people that were incarcerated that made terrible, scary mistakes. The way that I eventually began to approach it, and again, I'm going to caveat this with I'm not a psychologist, this, that, and the other, have no training, but it's years of experience. First, you have to establish there is such a thing as good and bad. This is not a given when you have people like Donald Trump and Andrew Tate and also French existentialist, postmodernist types that want to tell you, no, it's all relative. Good and bad is relative. It's not. Well, if you want to say that, then we can argue that beating my wife was the right thing to do at the time because then I can rationalize it. No, you can't. And the truth is that when you sit down, even with people that have committed the worst things, if they're not psychopaths, they get to a universal truth that being caring to your loved ones is better than terrorizing your loved ones, that being sober is better than being inflicted with addiction, and on the list goes. But first you have to establish values. Once you establish values, well, then you have to decide, okay, look, what are we going to do with this masculinity of yours? What's your hero's journey? If this was a book and every day is a chapter, what's the name of your book?
But doesn't this come back to what Herman was saying just a while ago, where we have the opportunity to make heroes of the men who will stand up and stand out against violence against women and all the other things, dogs, cats, and everything else. I mean, we can make heroes.
The crazy thing is, men don't want to be that kind of hero.
Well, no. I think some men really do.
I think some men do. I agree with John.
I think some men really do.
I thought I'd be the only Neanderthal using the term values, and I'm glad you used it because I think it is so important. It is so important because we think it's an old-fashioned term coined by our grandparents to keep you in check. No, there is good and bad in this world, all right? Hitting a woman is wrong. There is no justification just because she liked it, because she enjoyed it. Being a racist is not good because, you're scared of foreigners. I'm sorry, that is wrong. And we live in a world where the term alternative facts has been coined, This is the problem. No, there is truth and fiction.
Yeah.
The four of us are in this room at the moment recording a podcast for the She Word. Don't try to come up with another interpretation of what we're doing, but this is the madness we're living in. And if we're not armed enough to understand what's going to happen in the next few years because of the resurgence of the AI now, we're on a slippery slope. So for me, do I have a solution? Nobody has a solution, but I do know some things. At least let's start off by calling out what is wrong. If there's something which is fiction, call it out, say it. And the way to do it, unfortunately, is through social media. It's big, it's bigger than all of us, but at least we can try to call out the madness.
There is this need to give men a mission, because men will always look for a mission. Now, either Andrew Tate is going to give you the coordinates of what your mission is going to be.
But his narrative works, huh?
100%, because Andrew Tate is an extremely intelligent, high IQ human being. He is just amoral. He is just a charlatan. He is just very capable.
I disagree with you.
Bro, no one gets to that level of influence in the world without understanding.
Shock sells, John.
Well, a lot of people are doing shock, but not enough people have the intellectual foresight or the intellectual refinement to go, what's the big social issue right now? What's the big, men are lost.
John, you think if Andrew Tate was sitting here, we wouldn't be able to take him on?
He's extremely smart. I mean, he
is
guy.
smart.
No, listen. Andrew Tate is not to be underestimated. This is the problem. So Andrew Tate, what does Andrew Tate do? He empathizes with his audience, with his target audience are young, lost men that are fatherless and they're all over the place, etc., etc. And then once he's empathized with you, like this is the con game. This is how charlatans operate. Once he's won your credibility because he's diagnosed it right. The diagnosis is right. There's a crisis in masculinity. How well he says it, my God, and he's funny as well. And then once he's won the credibility, he gives you the prescription. The problem is, bro, you treat women too good. You don't think that they're your property. What? You're getting married? You're gay. You're gay. That is how he does it. He wins over. He charms you. And while Shock says, and there's a lot of people out there's the Haktua girl, and there's Ben Shapiro, and there's so many people doing it. But no one does it as well. And there's Conor McGregor, and all of these big carnivalesque. No one does it as well as Andrew Tate, because Andrew Tate understood the formula. Now, there is another way, which is, we agree, there is a problem. And we empathize. Guys, you're killing yourselves. Yes, guys, you are addicted to drugs and porn and can't talk to a bloody woman. Now, what do we do with this? We need a new prescription. Put people on a mission. So someone I like a lot is Anthony Joshua. Do you guys know Anthony Joshua? The big British boxer. This guy was on a path to hell. Then he took on amateur boxing and became one of the nicest heavyweight contenders and heavyweight champions of the world. So he took his masculinity and he used it in a way that is, well, it's entertaining, it's athletic, it's not in the streets, he's not being a criminal, right? And he's actually, like people say that he's actually a very nice person, he's very helpful, same as Manny Pacquiao and all of these. We need these new types of heroes. I think we have a crisis in heroes, maybe.
But yes, I mean, that sounds like a huge issue I hadn't thought of before. Yes, maybe we are. Maybe we are missing genuine heroes. And genuine heroes, bringing this all the way back to this topic, genuine heroes who will speak out, who will have the courage. And it's kind of why you guys are at the table, because you guys are heroes. I said you're very nice men, but you are heroes in that you're prepared to sit at this table and have a conversation about the endemic problem of violence against women, whether that be sexual assault, or whether it be domestic violence or whatever it is, intimate partner violence. The power of somebody speaking out, somebody like yourselves or somebody like him, who is obviously a man's man, for want of a better term, and saying, being violent towards a woman, the impact of that, having heroes who can stand up and call out bad behavior is phenomenal. And yet there seems to be an absence. I want to ask you guys, who would you regard as your heroes? We all have heroes. We all have, even as mature adults, we have people that we look up to. Who are your heroes and what are their narrative? Frank, who do you look up to?
Very difficult question, but I think over the years, my heroes have become people who are closer to me. So in the past, I used to idolize the rock stars, the superstars. Nowadays, I'm slowly beginning to understand that the real heroes of this world are the people that we spoke about values, are those people that are truly living by the same values, that are clearly doing good, identifying wrong from right, and those people are very close to home. Those people can be people you work with, people you live with, people who you're related to, and slowly I'm starting to turn those people into my heroes, as opposed to the Freddie Mercurys, who I will continue to love and whatnot. But yes, I think heroes, if we're to look around, the heroes are much closer to home.
I think as we grow older, we have less heroes. I think you get a sense of, Freddie Mercury, Bowie, Brian May, those were my heroes. Buffon. Normally, though, I also always looked up to humble, sportsmen or singers, and also Brian May, the Queen guitarist, is one of the nicest people in the world, and he does a lot of work, on the side, animal rights and all that. But is he really a hero? I prefer to look down on people doing incredible work on the side without any acknowledgement. One of my heroes, I think, is probably my younger brother, Sean. He works in the disability field. He goes into godforsaken places around the world. Nobody knows. Sometimes I wonder if he's still alive, and he's just trying to get the most forgotten people in the world closest to healthcare. And nobody really knows about this guy. And like Sean, there are millions of people around the world, and we don't know their heroes.
So there's a distinction like him growing up and now. So now my hero is my mother. Every time I'm in trouble, I say I have her DNA. So I'm okay. So, yeah. And then growing up, Hulk Hogan.
They endorse Trump.
That doesn't surprise me.
No, look. The character.
Okay. Before we...
There was something. Can I just say, make this Hulk Hogan claim very quickly? I know I talk a lot. I know, but I'm very passionate about if I say yes to an
talking.
interview. I'm very passionate about, well, talking as well, I guess. I think debate is a big part of my life. But when it comes to Hulk Hogan, he had kind of like the samurai code, really and truly, which is why, well, he just did so well. It was like this great, powerful guy that could body slam giants. And he is just unbeatable and unshakable. And sometimes he's almost going to lose, but he finds in himself, heroic fortitude. But he always does it like his ring walk was. He'll walk down to the ring. Massive. I want to be an American. Do of that what you will. And then he would arrive ringside, find a child, go to the child, take off his glasses, give the glasses to the child, kiss the child, and kind of tell him like in one gaze, I'm doing this to make the world better. And he'd go and he'd destroy some villain. And that idea of a strong man that is using his aptitude for suffering and endurance to make the world better, that's still beautiful to me.
Absolutely. 100%. And I feel like just sitting at this table as we come to the end of this conversation for now, that even sitting at this table and having you guys being as honest as you have been is, for me, you guys being heroes and leading the way in opening up these conversations and being able to call out and put your flag there and say, violence against women in any way, shape or form is not okay. And I feel like we have to have more heroes that are able to do that. I'm going to ask you guys for your closing thoughts. I know we could be here for hours, but I think this is a conversation that we need to pick up. And I'm going to ask Herman, you first, for your closing thoughts from this discussion. And I feel like there is so much more to say that we haven't even started.
Where do I start, Trudy? I mean, the reality is we spoke about a lot of problems, not enough solutions maybe today. And I think that is the biggest problem. We know what the problems are. And I think it's about time we sit down and to start really discussing doable solutions, because we're up against the social media monster. And it is very, very difficult to fight. It's bigger than all of us ever imagined. And I hope it's not too late, because we discussed Andrew Tate, but like Andrew Tate, there are thousands of people. There are, politicians who are misogynist. There are heroes who are perpetuating this language that indirectly feeds into this narrative that men are better and all that. So I think what we need to do is, at least you have the power to speak up. Freedom of speech exists. The one thing which pisses me off about this country is the self-censorship. People say, I'm scared. I'm still scared because of him and her. And they keep mentioning the jobs and all that. Whatever it is, speak out. There is freedom of speech. Whatever they say, we can speak out in Malta. All right? We still have this liberty. Don't take it for granted. Because if you're scared now, can you imagine what's going to happen once we live in this dystopic world, literally, where somebody else is speaking on your behalf?
I think I would just add to you saying that we haven't walked away from the table with solutions, but we have walked away from the table having an absolute brutally honest conversation. And that in itself is a start down a path to a solution. Frank.
Two quick comments. First of all, I've already mentioned this earlier, but to the perpetrators, help is available.
Yes.
Get help. If you need help, admitting that you need help and looking for that help is the first logical step. And to all of the men out there, if the statistics says that 1 in every 3 women is affected by some sort of abuse, that means that if there are 3 women in your life that you genuinely care about, at least one of them is going to be affected. So do you want to keep ignoring the conversation?
Thank you.
So I'll just say, as we're kind of agreeing that this seems to be part of a broader problem, which is men's inability to bridle their penchant for aggression and violence. And I think that needs to be addressed at its root and at its core. One way to do it, which is a thing that we haven't discussed, is certainly therapy. I think men are going more to therapy, but I'm not sure that when they go to therapy, they're approaching it the right way. Sometimes there are doors that are perhaps too shameful or too difficult to open. And when they get close to those doors, they kind of turn away. And that is, unfortunately, is the pain is the answer, guys. One last thing about fathers. If you are a dad and you have a boy, you have great responsibility. Do not shun that responsibility. Boys that grow up in fatherless homes have far more likely, they're far more likely to do everything we've discussed here today. Literally everything, the drugs, the violence, the abuse, everything, if you have a fatherless home. And as a final note, I think men coming together with women is a beautiful thing. Like my favorite thing in life is hanging out with my wife and creating that wonderful relationship, that wonderful balance between my masculinity and her femininity. I think that has propelled the quality of my life to a quality that I didn't is not a thing that I imagined was even possible. So yeah, shout out Maria Brown.
Can I add one more thing? Since I come from the media, one of the things that I would really like to invite people, women who have faced some kind of abuse and they feel frustrated by the system, please come to the media. You have no idea the power that a story, your story can have when you feel you're being shunned by everybody, what impact it could have once that story hits a front page. I still remember about a year ago, this woman I barely knew. I knew her through some friends, and she told me, look, I was violently assaulted, I was raped, and it was the most horrific story. It came out of the blue. She said, I'm even ashamed to be talking to you. She contacted me via Messenger. She said, I'm ashamed to even be reaching out to you. I just met you once. This is what happened to me. She said, but I've had enough. We got her story. We found ways and means of hiding her identity, but it was clear pretty much to the aggressor who it was. Within a few weeks, the whole case ended up in court. So speak up, because there are still means of rectifying the situation. If you feel, look, there are good police, there are bad police, It depends sometimes who you're reporting your case to.
Correct.
But if you end up with the bad police, and I have been there, I accompanied once a friend of mine. She was chased, terrified. I mean, I went with her to the police station, and it was like I was being seen by a Boy Scout, literally. It was embarrassing. Yeah. I mean, it was just like she was reporting a bumper to bumper.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head, which is why for an awful lot of these instances, women do not come forward because they're not only just afraid of the perpetrator and of the incident, they're also afraid of the reporting as well. But we will definitely put under here all of the contacts that you need if you want to report that, if you want to get in touch with media and so on. Everything that you need is right under these dialogues, whichever platform you're watching this on. I want to say, guys, listen, thank you. Because whilst it might be frustrating to be sitting at the table and saying we're not walking away with answers, we are walking away with the first initial talking about this. And I think the very fact that you guys have accepted the invitation to sit here and talk about an issue from a male point of view that women have been talking about for millennia and getting men on side is absolutely groundbreaking. I don't have anything left, but thank you. Guys, thank you very much indeed.
Cheers. The mince pies now.
Yeah, definitely. Mince pies.